a teleprompter nightmare for Joe Biden at a campaign event in Wisconsin.
We get look. We now have. We used to, before the recession, before the pandemic. The beer brewed here, it is used to make the brew beer in this refiner. Oh, Earth Rider, thanks for the Great Lakes. I wonder why it's called. Tammy Baldwin of Wisconsin. Tammy's the one. And Amy Klobuchar and Tina Smith from the state of Minnesota. If I have all three of them on my side, I don't worry about anything.
Oh my God. I'm going to start with you, James. We need to remember this guy's running for 4 more years. Is this just a common occurrence now with Joe Biden? He just cannot read the teleprompter.
It's extraordinary, isn't it? I mean, I suppose to some extent this is priced in with voters. He was like this when he was vice president. He used to make kind of self-deprecating jokes about himself, trying to read these things. And people are aware that he's not the sharpest tool in the shed anymore. I suppose that it's all factored in. When you look at how bombastic Trump is, he's sort of so far the other way, going off script, and no one knows what he's going to say next.
Yeah.
Even if you can't understand what Biden's saying.
It is a stark contrast.
It's extraordinary. It's almost like reading a kind of James Joyce novel, right?
Yeah.
And he's sort of making those kind of weird noises where a coffee is boiled or something. It's bizarre.
It's like he's been fast-forwarded. The tape has been fast-forwarded.
But also, in the last clip we saw, right, he's been doing this thing where he makes the point, he might get angry, so he starts shouting, but then he starts whispering into the microphone. And that's when people start going, hang on, what is going on with this guy? What are we doing here?
If you're being conspiratorial, it's almost like that he's sort of given some kind of pick-me-up, right? Maybe let's just call it a Barocca, to kind of get out there and go, okay, yeah, I'm up for it now, I'm up for this fight or anything, before he kind of slips back into this slightly diminished mental acuity role that he's probably got the rest of the time.
But it is actually nuts, because I think in some ways the fact that Joe Biden does have this real problem with like the most basic eloquence that you would expect from a politician has actually, I think, oddly cemented his position as being the Democratic nominee, because basically the big dogs at the DNC said, we don't want there to be public debates between different Democratic contenders because Joe Biden will look utterly ridiculous. So they've basically put the brakes on having any kind of public debate, and they've gone instead for the full-scale coronation of Joe Biden.
Well, you kind of wonder, and we spoke about this last week on the show, but you do wonder what will happen when it does come down to a Trump-Biden debate. How is that going to happen? What are these two going to even speak about?
Well, I think that it will probably be Trump doing what he does very well, being mean and cruel, and making great political capital out of Biden's inability to speak. And, love or hate Trump, I think there's no denying the fact that he might have the best comic timing of any politician that I've ever seen. Whether it's intentional or not, there is something so deeply funny about the way that he says things. And I could see him basically a laugh a minute when we're meant to be discussing important issues of global relevance, and everyone would just be laughing and making memes of it.
I mean, I think this is just is he the best of a bad bunch? I mean, there's so many different ways to describe Biden and Trump. You've got Trump, who is obviously a little bit unhinged, goes off the rails, and then you've got Biden, who can't really approach the teleprompter. You don't approach the stage.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you think back to 4 years ago when these guys had their first match off against each other, it was still during various lockdowns and COVID restrictions coming in and out. And Biden managed to campaign largely from his basement in Delaware.
I mean, that is
wrapped in cotton wool.
Point.
Yeah.
Has he got, as an 81-year-old, I think he is now, has he got enough in the tank to do this really, really grueling campaign tour, flying all over the country,
Probably not.
making speeches like that?
Yeah.
And it really is a serious question, because, should he be president once again, and if his health were to decline and deteriorate such that he could no longer govern, suddenly we'd have Kamala Harris as the president of the United States, someone who also can't string a sentence together but has nothing like Joe Biden's excuse. So it's basically terrible options all round.
Three terrible options. Well, speaking, James says 81-year-old. He's the 81-year-old president, and he does have some form. I want to look back at some of his best moments.
We're going to seize their yachts, their luxury homes, and other ill-begotten gains of Putin's kleptocracy and the guys who are the kleptocracies. America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to foot. Barack always kids and he says, Joe Biden, he said, I'm learning to speak without a teleprompter. Joe's learning to speak with one.
I mean, guys, he admitted it. He admitted it long before he even ran.
Right. which makes me more worried. Why does he's not been able to train himself out of this? The guy's been a politician for 4 times longer than I've been alive or something. How has he not got this quite basic skill? If you remember watching something like Back to the Future, they go back to the 50s and say, where's President Reagan? You mean the actor? Of course, in the future, you'll have to look good on television. He can't do that. It doesn't exactly instill faith that when he's behind scenes, what is he saying?
I think that's the point, because, I mean, you can be as strong as you want when it comes to your policies, when when it comes to foreign intelligence, foreign anything, as a president, you can learn so much, but actually being able to speak on camera, speak to your constituents, speak to anyone, it should be the most important part.
Stuff. And it was for me as writing the parliamentary sketch. I mostly focus on UK politics, but I recently did one of Rishi Sunak's visit to the White House, and it was just extraordinary. I mean, he made Rishi Sunak, who's not the most he can deliver a speech and he's capable of reading off a teleprompter, but he's a very awkward operator politically as well. But my goodness, he came across like Winston Churchill in comparison to Joe Biden. I mean, Joe Biden couldn't even remember what Rishi Sunak's name was. He was referred to as Rashid Sunak.
Yes, and then he called my Prime Minister the guy from Down Under.
Oh, yeah. Exactly. We've all been very insulted by this. Yeah. He had to have these little cue cards just for essentially a sit-down discussion, much like we're having right now, which ought not to be that difficult. So clearly the problem isn't just the teleprompter.
Yeah, Maddie made this great point about the kind of bigwigs in the Democratic Party behind the scenes who are sort of setting this up so there is a coronation, all the rest of it. I've had a meeting or two in the White House when I was in government with some of these guys behind the scenes. And you think, well, maybe these are the people who are actually running America now. If this guy is just the kind of figurehead or puppet
masters.
Well, all these talks about his, behind the teleprompters and his kind of actual cognitive decline.
Yeah.
I do think that's something, whether it's in America, Australia, here in Britain, if a Prime Minister or a President was suffering things like that, public definitely deserve to know.
They do. We can't have like a Potemkin president, basically. You've got to, at the very least, there's got to be some kind of democratic accountability. But at every term, the Democrat Party, ironically, have been the ones who are most involved in this cover-up and this coronation.
It has, and that is obviously one of Trump's biggest kind of political goes at. But I want to bring this grab up because with the Republican nomination all sewn up for Trump, he's already turning fire on Biden.
When I imitate Biden, you can't find his way off a stage. You can't put 2 sentences together, right? Can't put 2 sentences together. Here's a teleprompter. He doesn't know where the hell the teleprompter's there. And the nice part about me, I only use the teleprompter. The average, I think they say it averages about 9%. Wouldn't it be nice if you had a guy that didn't really need the teleprompter? Isn't that nice, though? Isn't that nice?
I mean, it's an easy insult.
Yeah, and everything he says is funny. I'm sorry, it just is.
That's true. It's impossible to entirely hate someone who's that funny for all the problems and all the rest of it. When some guy can make you laugh even against your best will. It's when Reagan in the 1984 presidential campaign, they said he was too old then. He was much younger than either of these guys now. And it's when you want to talk about age. He says, yeah, absolutely. I won't yet let my opponent's youth and inexperience become an issue in this campaign. And when even the guy on the stage next to him starts laughing, that's why he won, 49 of the
We need a healthy middle. We need a healthy middle.
And actually, one thing we didn't touch on, I know that we're moving on to a different topic, but I also think it's shameful that there was such a conspiracy of silence amongst journalists and reporters to discuss this about Biden's condition, because now it's become so apparent that it can no longer be ignored. But for a very long time, it was almost, I felt that there was a sort of omerta in which journalists agreed not to even mention this stuff and leave it to social media.
100%. Only very few media were covering this, and it's only going to get worse, as we can see.